She let her family disrespect him for a decade. He filed the papers on a Monday morning. Part 1 of 4. They never used his name. That was the first thing anyone who spent time around the Whitfield family noticed, if they were paying attention. Not in the early days when Nathan Osei first started dating their daughter Camille, and not in the years that followed. And not even at the wedding, where Nathan stood at the altar in a suit he had saved 4 months to buy, and watched Camille walk toward him with her father's hand on her arm, and her mother dabbing her eyes in the front row. Even then, even on that day, her father referred to him as Camille's husband when making the toast. Not Nathan, not son, not even the groom. Just Camille's husband. Like a job title, like a function, like a piece of furniture that had been acquired to serve a purpose and would be referred to by what it did rather than what it was. Nathan noticed. He filed it away in the particular way that quietly observant people file things. Not with anger, not yet, but with the careful attention of someone who understands that small patterns are the truest information. He had grown up in Akron, Ohio, where his father, a civil engineer named Leonard, had taught him to read structures. Not just buildings. Everything. The way a room held tension. The way people arranged themselves around a table told you who mattered and who was tolerated. Nathan had been reading structures his whole life. The Whitfield family was not a complicated structure to read. He just did not want to believe what he was reading. His name was Nathan Osei. He was 27 years old when he married Camille Whitfield in a ceremony at her parents' estate in Buckhead, Atlanta. He was a junior project manager at a mid-sized construction firm, hardworking, methodical, the kind of man who arrived early and stayed late and did not make noise about either. He loved Camille with the uncomplicated sincerity of someone who had not yet learned that love could be used against you. He was good at his job, good to his wife, and genuinely believed that if he was patient enough and consistent enough and useful enough, the Whitfield family would eventually see him as one of their own. Before we go any further, drop a comment right now and tell me where in the world you're watching from and what time it is. Sunrise in Phoenix, midnight in London, afternoon in Lagos. I want to know you're here. Tell me. Now, let's get into it. The Whitfields were old Atlanta money, which in practice meant they had enough of it to behave as though having it was simply the natural order of things, and anyone who didn't was experiencing a personal failing. Camille's father, Reginald Whitfield, had inherited a real estate portfolio from his own father and expanded it modestly over 30 years with the confidence of a man who has never had to build anything from nothing. Her mother, Dolores, ran the family's social calendar with military precision and spent considerable energy maintaining their standing in Atlanta society. Her brother, Brendan, was 32, unmarried, employed at the family business in a role that appeared to involve attending meetings and offering opinions, and regarded Nathan with the disdain of a man who mistakes inherited position for earned superiority. They did not dislike Nathan. That would have required engaging with him as a person. What they did was more efficient and more damaging. They simply did not include him. Conversations at family dinners flowed around him like water around a stone. Present, acknowledged at a surface level, but never genuinely incorporated. Reginald spoke to Brendan and sometimes to Camille, but rarely to Nathan. And when he did, it was in the tone of a man explaining something to a junior employee. Dolores organized family events through Camille, who would relay details to Nathan. Never a direct invitation, always a relay, as though direct communication required an intermediary. He was not in the family group chat for the first 2 years of the marriage. When Camille noticed and mentioned it, he was added. Nobody acknowledged the addition. If you have ever sat at a table full of people who made you feel invisible without ever technically doing anything wrong, type, "I felt that" in the comments right now. And subscribe before we go any further. This story is just beginning, and you need to be here for where it ends up. The labor started gradually, the way these things always do. A request here, a favor there, each one small enough to seem reasonable in isolation and large enough to establish a pattern in accumulation. The first year, it was helping Brendan move apartments, a full Saturday, a rented truck, 4 flights of stairs, and receiving a handshake that somehow felt like being dismissed rather than thanked. Then it was fixing the leak in Reginald's home office ceiling during a family gathering. Then it was the landscaping project at the Whitfield estate that Reginald had been quoted $40,000 for, that Nathan managed himself for $19,000 using his industry contacts. 11 weekends of his summer. The landscaping came in under budget and looked better than the original quote would have produced. Reginald looked at the finished result, nodded once, and said to Dolores, "It came out well." He did not say it to Nathan. Nathan was standing 6 feet away. He did not leave. He was not the type to leave before he understood what he was leaving. He was still reading the structure. He was still telling himself it would change. You're still here. Good. Because what comes next is where the pattern stops being subtle. Subscribe right now. This story is about to show you exactly how much one man can absorb before he decides he has absorbed enough.